Yo, what's up? Welcome back to this very professional channel. I want to talk about landing spots for a second, if you got a minute. Rookie landing spots, and how they matter. Okay, that was fun, and I do want to make some points, but I try to run through the whole NFL and make those points. And I got a 50-minute video you do not want to watch. I was watching back some of my content, and the more I do this, I'm disorganized pretty much, and I like the off-the-cuff stuff. But I'm worried at a certain point it just looks like too much. So try and tighten it up here a little bit. Let me know if this is better. All right, so. Do landing spots matter? Yes, they absolutely do. But I think I don't think we're very good at predicting what matters, if that makes sense. Most of the explanations we can come up with why AJ Brown landed in a good spot, for example, make perfect sense, but they're not what we were saying before a player actually went there, or even after a player went there, although we got closer afterwards. Which is why I typically don't predict the draft. I don't know team needs. I'm not predicting draft capital. It's stuff I'm gonna know, and the more I look at volume, the more I believe players have more to do with driving volume than we typically think, or at least in my small bubble, we typically represent. Now, I wrote an article. I was waiting for the applause. Now, I wrote an article about vacated targets once, and I'm pretty sure no one read it because it's real deep. It's real deep. And I went into some depth on it, but I really wanted to understand this number it just didn't make sense to me. Now it's tracked, if you're interested, because I don't use the number for it, and it's really difficult work, to be honest with you. If you're interested in it, what I recommend is you check out, it's not called RotoViz anymore, isn't it? It's called, what is it, NBC Sports Edge. But John Daigle, who I have spoken to about this topic, because despite my general silly disposition, I do actually prefer other people's opinions to my own. And he tracks lost or vacated targets and vacated air yards and a whole bunch of stuff. And if you just type his name in, John Daigle, vacated volume, vacated targets, the article comes straight up, or at least it does on my Google. Your Google may vary. Or check out John Daigle in general, because he's phenomenal. He's great. I really enjoy his stuff, and I think he's very smart and good all around. This is not a John Daigle video, so I'm moving on. But it's a quick way of just seeing what's missing in this whole idea of vacated targets. Now, my conclusion on that video is other people needed to look instead of assume, because that's my whole thing. I like to go and look, see if something makes sense in practice instead of it making logical sense. I don't know, I'm weird. So what I concluded was there was value to it, definitely, but it was not a number that in any way gave us a sense of how many targets or even how many passing attempts a team would produce the next year. Which is weird, because that's typically, I think, how we think that works. You lose 50% of your air yards. I mean, you got to get that back, right? No, not really, and certainly not necessarily from the players coming into the team or the players on. We tend to read it wrong. But what I did find is that it had value. I like to say targets are created, or at least volume is driven by players, like I said at the start of this video. But what I came to understand was that's not perfectly true either. I think it's more true than we, again, typically think of it. AJ Brown goes to Tennessee, volume increases, and lots of people want to add the story of and accurately so, that we didn't know that Tannehill was going to change that offense so much. I think with that AJ Brown, he doesn't. Yeah. And I think that tells the story of the Corey Davis better. Corey Davis is good. He's above average. He deserves his draft capital, but he needed at least time or maybe help, because I think players who are good in the same roster help each other out. I think that tells a better explanation of what happened than, we just didn't know Tannehill was going to be good again or drive more volume than Mariota. I don't, and again, Your mileage may vary, but I wrote this whole thing for it, and you can go check it out anytime you want on DLF, or, my data's free and available. Or, go back through John Daigle's history, see what you think of vacated targets and air yards. But my point here is that it has value, but I found it to be more interesting in terms of trying to read team situation than to predict or understand exact volume numbers year over year. Now, the problem and why it doesn't work out as a this many missing, this many added kind of equation is, one, that's just a straw man version of it, and two, I think it's got more to do with team intention in that, but we could misread that intention. If you vacate your offense, it could be because you want to restart, you want to tank. It could be because you are making room for players on the depth chart already, or you're looking to add other players you think are going to be good. You do that and then they don't hit, and then it doesn't read the right way when you look at it post hoc or after the fact. And so there can be a bunch of reasons why, but it does give you some insight as an outsider with no sources into what the team might be trying to do, and it gives you a range of options of why they might be making those moves and the extent to which they have added or not added. In fact, we should really track added volume, which I think is a flaw, and I tried to look at briefly in that article, but again, it was already too big and too nerdy, and I needed smarter people to give it fresh eyes or give me fresh ideas about it, and so far no one's followed it up. But I came to the conclusions as best I could and gave the data in an attempt to try and spur the conversation. And that's where I'm at. I think it's an interesting number, but it doesn't work as insight into what the team will do next year. Team variability in passing attempts is within a range. Actually, coaching history is fairly consistent. But don't want to get into that stuff here because, I wrote it all down, man. But my conclusions were, vacated targets don't exist. They literally no longer exist. So yeah, last year's targets, they no longer exist. And as with other research that I've done, players do more to drive volume than teams do to define it or decide what it's going to be, and then they try and find players to fill it. I don't think this top-down view of looking at volume is the way it works, but it continues to be described not that way or that way by people who are a lot smarter than me, who've been doing this for longer, and so again, it definitely has value. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up here is because it's one interesting way of looking at potential landing spots for rookies. Another way is just team volume, which again, I wrote about a little bit in that article. I've done other ways, and I've done other research videos, and I guess I should do research articles on it. I guess I should do more videos on it so I could refer you to videos on here. But it's hard work, man. And I haven't quite gotten around to it. But I can tell you honestly from my experience in looking at team passing attempts and coaching tendencies and everything else, that there is a surprising consistency to the rate at which offensive coordinators or head coaches like to pass the ball. That's true, but there's strong variability specifically around the types of talent they had on the depth chart. In fact, that's even more true when you look at coaches that we can feel pretty confident are above average in the NFL. The best way to be a good coach in the NFL is to adjust well to the talent on your depth chart, or adjust more appropriately to the talent on your depth chart. But that's also, I don't know where the causation comes from there. If, the players are good, you adjust to them and therefore you're a good coach, or you're a good coach so you adjust to the player. I'm not a coach, but I do know there's a relationship there. John Harbaugh has passed the ball a lot more in certain years, and when you look at that team, it kind of makes sense why you'd be passing the ball more now. He passes the ball a lot less to a historic level in the last 2 years, and it makes sense when you got a quarterback with Lamar Jackson. He's limited, but not bad as a passing quarterback, and an exceptionally gifted rusher, right? So it makes sense that I think last year he was passing for 405 pass attempts and around 42% passing percentage. That's the percentage of team attempts that were in the passing game. Like, that's really low. Pete Carroll has numbers that low, and also a significant history, as a coach. And we can see the variability there. For example, he's down around that range, around 2012 to 2014. 2013-ish, and then after 2014 it starts to go up a little bit. Now Russ has never got to cook. That team relies on efficiency, and I think that has a large amount to do with the fact that Russell Wilson is pretty good. But around that time we also see Doug Baldwin and Golden Tate, who are both on the team in 2013, to be fair, but they really benefit from that, and that's the age of Doug Baldwin, essentially, when he starts to become fantasy relevant. Sorry, I've got to stop clapping and tapping the desk, and I'm trying to stop that, because I know it's really, because having listened back to a few, and I hate doing that, I have noticed that it's really annoying, so apologies. Yes, my mic's on, thank God. For a second there, I thought it wasn't. So, I wanted to offer you that opinion on volume, that there's at least a connection between how much a team passes and how good the players are at creating their own opportunity. And it's more to do with the player than we typically describe it as, because we look at it from this top-down view, because we don't know who the rookie is, but we do know who the OC is, and we do know who the HC is, presumably, and we do know what the team did last year, right? And I think it's fair right now, when speaking about landing spots, to say Baltimore caps the ceiling. That's what J.J. Zacharyson said this week while owning me online, because he's very good, about Baltimore as a landing spot. And I didn't want to object to that, because his logic is freaking great. I mean, that's true. That's what their clear intention is. I think there is noise around signal that they're intending to draft a wide receiver earlier. That's what spawned J.J. Zacharyson to speak about it at late round QB, as if you didn't know, on Twitter. Header number 5. I have a few thoughts on that. One is that they might be going up to get like a Brashard Perryman or a Marcus Brown, who I maintain is not a miss, it's just a miss for fantasy. Like, not many players come in and co-opt that large of a role on a smaller passing offense. And he didn't wash out like John Ross may have and Laquan Treadwell did. Like, that's actually success, I think. It just doesn't, we don't feel it in the NFL, in fantasy. So where was I going with that? If they're trading up to get a Kadarius Toney or a Jalen Waddle, then they're looking for high efficiency on a low level of plays, and that fits with the narrative. But if they go get a player that's really primarily distinguished themselves as being a traditional or a volume-driven or a volume-creating player, then maybe their intentions are different. I don't think so. I think JJ's got it on the nose, and the best expectation is that Baltimore does cap the ceiling. There's going to be less passing attempts than we would want. But I also think the fact that it's historically low means it can bounce up a little bit, regress towards the mean, and still get towards 500 passing attempts, which is, again, in and around the era with Pete Carroll and Doug Baldwin. And you can at least have some, like, maybe finally Marcus Brown can crest into the top 24, or at least Mark Andrews can be what he was when he was healthy 2 years ago, you know? And that doesn't even take into account rookies. I just think it's a little underrated because, yeah, it's a bad landing spot in terms of expected volume. That's true. But compared to what? And when you go through when I went through the NFL rosters and started looking at vacated volume and the picks available in the first round, which I don't typically do because I'm just a fantasy guy. I'm not real footballing. I don't know team needs. I don't even know what a linebacker is. But trying to get an understanding of what was a good landing, I could come up with like 10 teams. I could make a pretty reasonable case. Like, I would want, given the things we typically think we should value, I would want a rookie wide receiver to lean there. But I struggled to come up with 3 that I thought were really like, woo, that would be exciting. And to give you those 3 right off the top of my head, the first one, you know, it's the Chiefs. Everyone wants everyone to go to the Chiefs, and they can't. And they have shown a penchant or a tendency to go for high-efficiency, low-volume players in Tyreek Hill and McCall Hardman. So Travis Kelce's still that passing offense, probably. But one that did occur to me was I think the Colts are an extraordinarily good landing spot and have been for a while. I also, because the aspects I came up with to look for were good team. But that's very undefined, so, and I don't know how to well define. I think we would agree is probably the best way of saying it. I think their GM is spectacular. I think he's managing the value of that roster and draft capital and everything else incredibly effectively since he's taken over. He has spent 2 second-round picks on wide receiver recently, which kind of indicates that then And maybe they've fished all they want, and the fact T.Y. Hilton's has gone, and T.Y. Hilton's, yeah, I said it that way, and Sports Edge now, apparently John Daigle, points out that the Colts have lost significant volume. Maybe that's intention that they're clearing out room for Pittman, for Paris, who Zach Reed loves, and I was a little mediocre. They're okay in college. Or maybe they'll go fishing again. I have a strong suspicion that this draft class, a lot of players we like are going to fall a little bit more than we expect. But again, I'm not a draft analyst. I'm not trying to pretend to be either. I don't know. I think there might be a few T.Y. Hiltons. There might be a few Stephon Diggses in this class that were really good in college and fall a little bit for reasons. Probably to do in and around with the fact that the NFL also thinks slots were replaceable, or middle of the target fields are replaceable, even though, some are obviously difference-making level players. And also they want to take shots, because there's too much noise around the draft that Tony and Waddle, these are first-round prospects. And unless it's another freaking Hakeem Butler situation and all the NFL scouts have got all their information wrong, and there's just a few fantasy nerds sitting around going, okay, I probably won't draft that guy. And I don't think that's the case, and they are probably going to be effective first-round picks. But I think they're more dynamic weapons that is a path to being successful in the NFL. Moving on. So, what else? Effective team management. I like seeing a good GM. I like seeing proficient coaching over a series of years, and that is where we get back to the Ravens, because outside of the strong concerns for volume, there are very few teams I would put above the Ravens in terms of that team knows what it's doing. It's smart. It manages capital effectively. It manages its talent very effectively, in my personal opinion. And so their team on good. And how do I weight that? Volume over good coaching staff, sure. But then when I looked at the rest of the NFL, I struggled to find, being as generous as I could to the fact that volume matters most, and we are convinced we can predict volume. I'm not sure as effective as we like. But for the Ravens, sure. So how do I weight it? Being as generous as I could put it like 10th. But that's not hate. Like 10th favorite landing spot, and not many teams are going to draft a first or a second round wide receiver. And so probably maybe 5 of them draft a team. And if the Ravens are 1, they're 5th on the list. That's fine. But that's probably not enough to move the needle on a player I really think was good in college down an entire tier. That's kind of my opinion on the Ravens. It's a bad landing spot for volume, but it's such a good system, such a good executive branch, such a good coaching tree, that I would still be happy to see a player I thought was good go there, because I think they're going to do good things with that, although I admit there's a problem there in terms of volume. I'd much rather that than go to the Jets or the Giants. Sorry, apologies to Stephanie Smalls. And other things we can think about are the thickness of the depth chart. I don't want you to be drafted behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown like happened to Tyler Johnson last year. So I don't really want you to end up on Minnesota, even though it's a good, well-managed team. I think that's fair. Higher passing volume than the Ravens, sure, but you would have to fight through. Good players help good players, but there's a level to which, like, Tyler Johnson's just got an impossible weight above him, and there's no moving Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown if you get through any of them. Just as a third, why not have a historic level wide receiver? Yeah, good luck, Tyler Johnson's and Justin Watson, So I really don't want you to end up on teams like that. I know everyone and their mothers of this year is like, they need a wide receiver too. It's like, no, really, we only get 3 to 4 teams a year producing 2 top 24 wide receivers. And if you think your team's desperate need is for your wide receiver to also be Julio Jones, I think you, and I respect this opinion, but you probably like fantasy more than the real football aspect of it. Players drive volume and help teams, but as much as I love my skill position players, that's barely half. That's not half of the game of actually winning football games. They need be able to block. They need to be able to rush. They need to be able to keep players, get other teams off the field so they can get back on the field so they can win. So the defense matters. And I don't think wide receiver 2 is a deep need for anyone, but it is nice when Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley can happen. I get it. But it's not, I would consider that more of a concern for a rookie wide receiver landing than a positive. Depending, I mean, A.J. Brown is alone on the depth chart, and he's shown an ability to raise all boats. So Tennessee, sure, they can go above the Ravens as a landing spot, but when I ran through that exercise, I really couldn't find more than 10. So I just wanted to run through my brief ideas on landing spot, because honestly, I'm just going to read it as they land, and my overarching assumption is that if I think that player is good, I think they can make it in that situation, unless there's too much hampering them. I think that's a Denzel Mims problem. Jalen Reagor, honestly, I'm starting to wonder, like, Philadelphia Eagles are off the good team list for now. They're on the I don't know yet list, because I had not seen them do well or make too many smart moves for a while now. So maybe that's too much of a weight for Jalen Reagor, but that seems like obfuscation, because I really did love both of their rookie profiles, especially Jalen Reagor. But let's see what the sophomore year brings. So yeah, damn it, that was really tight, and I was going to roll on to my next point really easily, and I just forgot it. All right, so we're just going to end it. I think I've pretty much covered the way I think about landing spots as much as I do. I'm really going to see where they land, and then read it in the context of the other players and where they land. And I'm happy living that way. I like the draft being a surprise, to be honest. I do feel this draft might be more 2019 than 2020, in that in 2019 we're really excited, we're really geared up, we're sitting there, and we just have to wait forever for a skill position player to be drafted. And it's, even though it's a good draft class, it was a slow draft for the fantasy, at least. In 2020, they're rolling off the board almost every pick, it felt like. And again, the Colts fucking nailed it with a Jonathan Taylor pick as not a first-round pick, because I really do think that team's good at football. But anyway, so that's where I'm going to play it, and that's why I don't get into a lot. And also, I would point out, through my brief reading of it, since I don't profile it a lot, it seems to be the good landing spots are not the teams with the highest volume or the biggest missing volume or the emptiest depth charts. I mean, of the rookies that did well last year that we're now excited about, 4 of those teams were in the bottom 5 or 6 in terms of overall passing volume. So, again, that's not so the Ravens are good now. I'm not going against that take. Because I think that's very true, reasonable expectation. But I'm just pointing out the things we think make good landing spots haven't really helped us out a lot. And I found much more luck saying this player is good enough to succeed in this situation. And sometimes it happens and it feels good. Outside of that, some teams that did catch my eye while trying to do a little bit of this research, I think Cleveland's interesting. I really do think OBJ could come back. He's the one that was missing from that offense. Only played 7 games or so. Landry got 23% dominator, I think, which is low for him. And I think he could, OBJ rising back to what, I don't think he stopped being a good player. I really don't. They could help each other out as they did in college, and we could see them rise. And Baker Mayfield's a little underrated. He's a limited quarterback, but he's a little underrated at this point. And we could see that happening. So Cleveland's a little more interesting just for the players that are on there. But if you're a little more down on those players, there's room on that depth chart. There's significant signs that the team's somewhat well managed lately. There's other players on the team that are good, even if you just think it's Landry and you just think it's, I don't know, whoever else. I forgot the name. I literally forgot that. Rashad Higgins or whatever, or that Odell Beckham can play a nice ancillary role. There's at least players there with some talent that can support and provide extra opportunities to score, move the sticks, get down the field, and I do think players help each other out that way. More good players is more good. Yes, I said that. And I said it that way. So what else? I think Cleveland's interesting. I think Miami's kind of interesting. It's not it's not good team or on team good team. Got to find a better way of saying that. Not a particularly well-managed team, but I think Tua, again, is slightly underrated. There's room on that depth chart with other skilled players, but no ceilings. But again, Calvin Ridley got drafted behind Julio, and Frank, he worked out, because most of the things we think of as indicators haven't worked out because it's always such a unique situation. But yeah, looking through that lens, I think Cleveland's maybe more interested to me than I thought before I went and looked. So's Miami, although I'm a big fan of Will Fuller. And I hope he can do it on that 1-year contract. But there's space, and Will Fuller could help out another player in his rookie season, get to 600 yards, be promising. You never know. And I don't even know where their draft picks are. Who else stood out to me? Washington, maybe. I mean, the quarterback play's got to rise a little bit. Terry McLaurin's an amazing player to have on your depth chart. I have to accept at this point. And the team as a whole, it's on team I don't know. Probably bad team managed badly, but last year they did pretty effectively. Well, actually, the team was trash, and Terry McLaurin was just amazing, actually. But Antonio Gibson could help out. Maybe they get some other weapons, and Terry McLaurin can help rise all boats the same way A.J. Brown did for Corey Davis a little bit. I don't hate that idea. So, yeah. Denver. Oh, Denver is another one. I think there's room there. I love Tim Patrick. I love all my undrafted free agent bros, obviously. But, I mean, the NFL hates them, and they love the smell of their own farts, which is the way I say that teams want to pick the player that becomes a hit, and I'm not joking, that's what I think happens. As much as they know, good teams know the NFL draft is basically a lottery, a roulette wheel where you need volume to actually have any success. I think even on those smart teams, they want the players who are good on their team to be the ones they selected. And unfortunately, it goes against players like Donald Mooney, goes against players like Tim Patrick. I do have hope for Jerry Jeudy a lot. He had a great rookie year. I think it's slightly undervalued because he did have a good rookie year. Depending on what the player in your league thinks, he might or might not be undervalued. Value is tricky. But I think there's some room on that depth chart. I think the team is proficiently, if not as well managed as someone like the Colts or the Ravens or the Chiefs. I think it's proficient. I'm not big on Drew Lock, but I could definitely see Jerry Jeudy plus a third wide receiver, Tim Patrick, and someone else helping raise him up. I could see it. Don't hate it. And that might not be a team you initially thought of. Honestly, only two outside of the Chiefs, only one team really stuck out to me. So it would be really interesting if they're willing to spend capital on, and that was honestly the Colts. Like, it fills all those boxes. And again, ultimately, I think those boxes are more misleading. And so I'd rather think this is on a scale of landing spot, and I really want to believe if I'm drafting a player in any situation, it's because I believe that player is good enough to make the opportunity, and I found better luck thinking of it that way. But I'm also an idiot fake nerd sitting in the basement, so who knows? Anyway, just wanted to share some 30 minutes worth of thoughts on landing spots. Apparently, I mean, it's tighter, you know what I mean? But anyway, let me know what you thought. No spreadsheet, just my big old face this time, and I hated it. But I don't know. Let me know what you think. If there's something else I'm missing on landing, like, this is not an area I plumb a lot, and you don't know the field gradient coefficient or whatever it could possibly be, let me know, because I would like to know more things to add into my very vague knowledge about what makes and doesn't make a good landing spot. I know a lot about volume and what drives it, and how it doesn't quite work that way. But as far as what makes a good or a bad landing spot, honestly, I just came across a bunch of narratives which make sense, but I can't feel anything to throw my shoulder in behind to say, yeah, that's it. You just bet on that. And I can see why those who do would bet it or go in hard on volume, because volume is king, and you don't want a player to have to be efficient in order to produce. And an offense like the Ravens is bad. Just also seems like going to a well-managed team versus a poorly managed team would be something I would put on a list. But again, that's just a narrative, and volume's much more concrete and definitely much more valued. And so I definitely don't hate the Ravens as a landing spot, and I think relative to looking at other potential landing spots across the things I think we can value or think we do value, no, I think it's a decent landing spot. It's not the one you're idealizing. I'd rather the Chiefs, rather the Colts. I guess we'll throw, Cleveland, Washington, just because volume, above the Ravens, but how many of them are going to draft wide receivers in the first and the second round? And we'll know soon. Can't wait. So let me know what you think, what I'm missing, how terrible I am, and that I should get my hair cut. I know, I want to take off the hat. I really do. And I'll talk to you next time. Appreciate it. Bye.